What's up, y'all? What's it gonna be? Who's on the line with your boy KT? Let's go, let's go, let's go. Yo, listen, man, I'm really excited today for you all. We're gonna have a great discussion. I had one of my homegirls that's gonna be with us today. Listen, this is the first segment of Food for Thought. You heard it here first. Listen, the Brothers Brunch is presenting Food for Thought. You know, it's a play on words, obviously. It's so much more to the Brothers Brunch, and we know that. But Food for Thought today is going to be excellent. We're going to start out with the question, what's your plan, right? A lot of us pretty much kind of have a plan, but some of us don't. So when we expire, because we all have an expiration date, we want to know what's your plan. So I have my home girl who's, man, her name is Shari Fleming. All right. She's an attorney. She is a professor. She's a realtor. She's a wife. She's a mom, a mentor, a friend. She's a phenomenal woman, folks. And she happens to be one of my friends. So listen, food for thought, just so you know, it's just little smidgets here and there, things that I always think about, but people for whom I admire. I'm going to be bringing them onto the stage, man, and bringing them onto this platform. And we're just going to have a really healthy dialogue and conversation. I'm really excited for this work that we're doing. The Brothers Brunch, as you all know, is cuisine, culture, and connection. It's all about leaning into those three areas, those three ingredients that we call life. You know, great food, you know, and our relationship with food. We're going to talk about that in further segments, you know, and culture, great cultural experiences. If anybody who's ever been on a brunch, you know that we don't go to mainstream restaurants. So Ruth's Chris, check, that's cool. Sullivan's, check, that's cool. Morton Steakhouse, check, that's cool. But we go to places that you may not have ever known about. You know, we try to experience a culture on a different level. So, you know, if you've never experienced that, then you've never experienced the Brothers Brunch. And of course, connections, making connections with folks that you wouldn't otherwise make connections with. You'll find that I'm going to have a few females, a few brothers. This is we're agnostic when it comes to your gender, but at the end of the day, we realize that we want the women to plug in, and we want the men to definitely lean in, because these are conversations that we absolutely need to have in our community. So without further ado, I have my homegirl, Shari Fleming. Can I get a round of applause out there in the virtual world for my homegirl?
Hey, Kev.
What's going on, Shari? Listen, we're gonna jump right in there. I've already kind of given you somewhat of a intro, but I want you to tell the people who you are, because I basically gave you 30 titles,
And
and
that's
honestly, they're all true. And because can we see the degrees up on the wall,
it. Is that
low
out
key?
there?
Yeah,
Am
they
I
up there.
moving away?
Yeah. Can you tell the people who you are, a little bit about yourself?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. It's great to be a lady finally invited to the Brothers Brunch. My name is
Let's
Shari
go.
Fleming. I am a business and legal strategist, the principal of my own practice, the Law Office of Shari Fleming. I also engage in real estate. As Kamran said, I am a professor teaching pretty much everything, every area of practice. Those are the courses that I teach at two universities here in the state of Maryland. I have a quick disclosure or disclaimer for you all, though. So what I plan to do tonight is just answer questions and give information. This is not legal advice. I am no one's attorney. I'm not representing anyone. You all may be across the globe. I don't know where you are. So this is just information, okay? So if you really need legal information, you should consult an attorney in your state. And if you're in Maryland, contact me.
Hey, listen, she ain't never lies. She ain't never lied. Make sure you contact her, and we'll make sure we put her information up on the screen. Listen, a few housekeeping items. We do, if you want questions, you have comments or concerns, the numbers below, please dial in. We have a phone tagged to this line. We're basically going to have a conversation. We're going to jump right in there. And I'm really excited because these are conversations we might have in the living room, right? And or on the phone, where I've called and like, listen, man, you know, what's the difference between this and this difference between that? And it always gets to a point where she's like, look, the next question I'm gonna have to charge you, because I go in, right? I ask these questions, but I think about the future when it comes to my family. Like when we're talking, when we're at the table for the Brothers Brunch, you'd be surprised how many brothers really don't have an estate or legacy plan. And they think about it like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're well in your 30s or well in your 40s. And so what happens when, God forbid, you pass away? And
Yeah.
so I'm going to pose you with that question. Like, in your business, do you find that more people have a plan versus not?
Well, so here's the unique thing. One of the reasons why I got into estate planning is because my family plans. And well, my side, my husband's father, my father-in-law, my heart, became ill, and I asked, "Yeah, where's the paperwork? Where's the documentation?" And he was looking at me like, I don't know. And so I said, family meeting. We have to pull this together. And so what I began to learn, because at that point this wasn't an area of practice for me. But what I began to learn is that a lot of us skin folk don't
Tell it like
really
it is.
don't really plan. And so the more that I spoke with him, the more that I spoke with other people, for me, this is really an educational moment for us to think about the future. I come from, you mentioned legacy planning. It's huge in the way I was raised. I just lost my great grandmother at the age of 102. She just passed away last month.
Our
And
condolences.
from the time, so she was elderly when I was born, but from the time I was born, one thing we knew is that she had a burial plan. She had plots. Her funeral was paid for. Her burial was paid for, and she didn't want to be a burden on anyone. And so it's always been etched in my mind. So it's second nature to me to say, okay, well, you plan for life, but what happens after life? Because the one thing that is sure in life is that you are going to pass away. That is the one sure thing that you're guaranteed. So why not plan to protect your family? So that's how I got into it. And so what happens if you pass away without a plan? That status is called dying intestate or deceasing intestate. And
Okay, intestate. Give us the definition of intestate.
so it is pretty much not having a plan in place, not having a will in place when you decease.
How you
And
spell that?
so, huh?
Intestate.
Did you spell? You listen now.
I
Don't be trying to have me spell.
intestate. I've never heard the word. I just want to educate our guests. Like intestate, dying without a plan.
Yes, that's if you don't have a plan in place. And so each state has a set of rules as to who will automatically inherit your estate being everything that you own,
Okay.
physical property, iPads, computers, real estate, homes, land, and intellectual property. It's property. If you have, books, manuscripts, you may have. Song recordings, all of those things are yours. You own them. And so in the laws of intestate for each state will determine where your items go. And I encourage everyone to Google it. Quite frankly, it's public information. Google your state and intestate laws and see what happens. I am sure that what you think happens doesn't. So that's why you want to make a plan, because if you don't make one, there
Somebody will
will
make
be
one for
one
you.
made for you.
Absolutely.
And you may
Listen,
not agree with that.
listen, Shari. We're taking questions live, and we have my homegirl Sheryl Flag. They are the owners of Resh, or I always pronounce that incorrectly. I'm sure I do, but she's like a sister of mine, as you are as well. The question is, why do you think so many of us are reluctant to prepare with the legalities?
Okay. So this is my reason, and this is why I drafted this little. You see this? Can you see
Hey, I
that?
got one. I got one.
I drafted that. It's called a guide through difficult discussions. Quite honestly, for some it's ignorance, just and not just not knowing, but that's all cultures that may not know. For us in particular, we don't want to have difficult discussions. We don't want to discuss the hard thing. It is not easy to create an estate plan. I tell my clients all the time, the first consultation, you might need to see a therapist while you're seeing me, because it requires you to deal with and address generational issues, familial issues, and that stuff is just uncomfortable. And a lot of people feel that, or a lot of us feel, oh, it's just money. I should just direct where I want my money to go, and that's fine. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that when we start getting into the detail that's necessary to create an adequate plan.
No, I love that. So, obviously, Shari has said a lot. A guide through difficult discussions. Man, listen, you want more information? Please, check out my homegirl, Shari. www.sharifleming.com. Listen, I understand. I think I understand it, but so a lot of brothers that in my fold will say, "Well, listen, I don't necessarily have an estate per se. I think you just gave the definition, but I want you to really bring that home in terms of this notion of estate. Like some people don't even really feel like they have an estate. So talk to me.
So here's the deal. I go to a lot of training for real estate, economic training. And the fact of the matter is, I think the last statistic was like people of color, African American people specifically, we spend like $12 trillion. Our spending power is enormous. So this whole idea that we don't own anything is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so we have an estate. Your estate is what you own that will pass to whom you want it to pass to. It could pass to your children. It could pass to your heirs if you don't create a plan. But it's what you own, and so you work. That means you have money. You own a property. That means you own a house. You paid off your car. It's yours now. You own it, and so it is yours to transfer. The other issue outside of the discussions is I really believe that we don't see the value in the things that we own. Jewelry, artwork, I don't think that we fully see the value. And what's heartbreaking to me is that if you don't believe that you have if you don't believe that you have anything of value, then what the heck are you spending your money on? Because you're sure enough are working hard. So what are you doing? You're not investing? You're not saving? Like, what are you doing? If someone is asking that question or saying, I don't believe I have an estate, I need to know what you're doing with all of your income and your savings, because that becomes a part of your estate as well.
So I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. But sometimes people are in a space where they're almost embarrassed to ask these questions, right?
Mhm.
Particularly because they may get someone like you that's very direct and going to ask, well, what the hell are you doing with your money?
I didn't say
Um,
no.
you didn't say hell. So look, I want to demystify some of the things that are out there, or even educate some of the people, because I think this comes down to education, right? And I
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions, and I get I get some free legal counsel for now. And so what I will say is, so okay, I have an insurance policy, right? Let's play this.
Mhm.
And I happen to have a significant insurance policy. No need to put out numbers because I may not be here tomorrow, right? But what I will say is, okay, I don't have a will. Doesn't my
Mhm.
insurance policy cover what's going to happen or financially keep my family safe? When it's all said and done, why do I need actually a will? I mean, I need to know
Well,
that.
yeah, so well, it does depend on your situation. One, it does. So when you do a consultation with me, if anyone goes to the intake page, it's 1,000,005 questions
Hmm.
about your financial status. Insurance is counted towards your estate. The amount of your policy is counted towards your estate, but in most states, it does not pass through your will, meaning it does not have to be included in your will. Okay, the
Okay.
insurance policy, the proceeds will go directly to the named beneficiaries. So can you have insurance, have that policy go to the named beneficiaries and say, all right, that's that. That's fine, but what is that the only thing you have? Is that the only thing you own? So who's responsible for picking up your car? Where do you live? Who's going to close out your lease? You're no longer here. Are you living in your insurance right now? Like, are you eating off of that insurance money? All of the things that you utilize for your daily life, which is an insurance, who controls that and manages where that information goes? The
Sherry,
flip
I love it. I
the flip
love it.
side is this, and I want to mention this. I know we might get to this. If you have children,
Hmm.
particularly, the most important part of having a will, if you say I don't have a dollar to my name, which is a lie, but the most important part is that you designate someone to care for your children and to basically steward the money that you have left to them, which I hope you do. They're able to really, you're creating a plan for your children, because what happens if you're no longer here? You have the other parent who's around, And that's great that the children will most likely go to that other parent who remains the legal guardian. But you can still have a voice as to who you want involved in your child's life. Will it roll out that way? It depends on the way that you write it out. It depends on your situation, but it's basically a way for you to have a voice when you're no longer here.
Thank you. Can we unpack that a little bit? Because you mentioned a few things. So growing up, right? I was pretty much grew up as the only child. My dad has other kids, and they're my siblings, obviously. But I didn't live with my dad, and nor should I have lived with my dad. I don't think he had any interest of taking care of me, right? Outside of support chat. So that being said, if something would have happened to my mom and she didn't have a will, legally, would it have been his right to be able to take me, even though we had no necessarily, like, I wasn't with him majority of the time?
Yes, he's your father.
But couldn't my family fight for me?
I mean, they could, but and this is why you need to consult somebody in your jurisdiction, because it really depends on the family law of that state. But for the most
so the law
part,
differs by state.
Family, yes. Every state has its own set of rules, which is the law, and it's uniform in some areas, but for the most part, there could be little nuances that change. The surviving parent, outside of there being a termination of parental rights, the surviving parent is still a parent, a guardian, a recognized legal guardian. And so unless there is some reason for a court to determine that parent shouldn't be custodian or have custody of the child lives with that particular parent, unless there's some reason, at the end of the day, it does boil down typically to what's in the best interest of the child. But parental rights are huge. They're a major thing. They're just as, they're bigger than your right to own property. If not, they're seen as very strong rights. So I can't say what would happen, not knowing what, I want to be cautious because I don't know where people live and what the existing law is in that particular state.
Sure.
But I will say, if a parent's legal rights haven't been terminated, that is their child. So they would have to say, no, I'm good. Mm-hmm. let the child go live with Nana, or they assert those rights. And if they are asserting those rights and there is no abuse or neglect, I guess my thought is, for those single moms, and for that matter, single fathers out there, right? Definitely don't want to discriminate. I don't think you think about that, right? I don't think you necessarily think about you leaving before your kids, and God forbid something were to happen you're their lifeline. So if you leave, then legally that person that you're beefing with, right? Or that person that you're not allowing to see your child, 9 times out of 10, or that person that like there's a lot of contentiousness in some of these relationships. And I just, this is called food for thought. So none of this is like, of course you have to consult with your legal people and things of that nature. But so the other part of that is, so if I don't have it if I have it, can I have that in the will to say, this is where I want my child to go? Typically, you don't want to buck against what the existing law is. So the existing law is that child will go to that other parent. There's dead or alive, that parent's rights are intact. So typically, what you can write, that should something happen to that parent, you can state who you would like your child to be with. Keep in mind this, though. You can also, even though that parent has, let's say that parent gets the child for whatever reason, the property and the possessions that you are transferring to that child are not being transferred to that parent. They're being transferred to that child. Stay right there. Only because Sheryl asked a question that said, so in cases like that, if there is money, and I just want you to give me a comprehensive answer, if there is money left to the child / children, does that parent now control that also? It doesn't. The parent doesn't have to. You can name a guardian over the possession. So there are two different concepts. There's the guardian over the person, which is the child.
Okay.
Where will the child physically be? And there's the guardian over the possessions that are being left to the child, whatever that property is. That can
Two
you
totally
can
different people.
yeah, but here's the reality of it. If whatever parent is left taking care of that child, and that child needs something, and you have left sufficient money, or you've left something sufficient for that child to be accessed through another person. This is why you have to have conversations, because who is that person going to be that parent now has to engage in order to access what's necessary for the child? Do you see what I mean?
See what you're saying, but I think that it's again food for thought, right? And I think that
Mhm.
it's very important for us to think things through now, and not necessarily be all wrapped up in our feelings, but really put our
Yeah.
kids first, because we may be setting our kids up for failure, thinking that oh, I'm going to have, and I'm talking to myself too, right? I'm going to have so and so take care of the money, but so and so take care of the kids, and if everybody's not on the same page, then your kids are left in flux, not really knowing what to do, and it may do more damage than good.
Yeah,
It's a
and
good
so
thought.
this is why I say you probably need to go to therapy, because at the end of the day, you have to work out those issues. And I'm going to tell you right now, I do a lot of these trainings. There are a majority of women who attend training. Some are single moms, some are not. They call me, they're making their plans, and a lot of those plans are held up for that reason alone, because they can't figure out how it's going to work on a very practical level.
Hmm.
Whereas the men take a long time to plan too, but for women in particular, that's kind of the hurdle that they can't figure out, because you're not creating a plan that's in theory. You need to walk this through. You are not here. Where are these documents going to be held? Who has access? You have to walk this thing, think this thing through as if you're not here. And so it becomes very difficult especially if you have a co-parent who isn't pulling their weight or isn't involved. It becomes very difficult. And quite frankly, it digs up all of the issues that you have, frustration with this person. And quite frankly, work that out. I just need for you to tell me what you want to happen with these things. But these are some of the things that you need to think about beforehand, and maybe smooth over some of these relationships to say they don't have to be as contentious, just because you don't know. At the end of the day, you should be focused on what's the best interest of the child, even in death.
Yeah. So my wife is tuning in, and she said, so you need to think about who is the most responsible person in these situations. This is a longer one, so give me a second. Uh, think long and hard. Money change. This is Nita Warner. What's up, homie? Uh, think long and hard. Money changes people, and they will surprise you every time. Plan. Good topic. Very dear to my heart. That's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
tuning in.
So one of the things that I mentioned in the difficult discussions guide is, who do you talk with about money now in life?
Yes, I read that.
In life, who do you talk? And this is not just about money. This is also about healthcare when we talk about advanced directives. But who do you speak with about these things now? Who do you speak with about your healthcare? Who do you speak with about money? Kev, you know me. I talk about money all the time to every and anyone. Who do you have clear conversations with about how you who do you tell? We're scary about money. We don't want to tell people our credit score, and we don't want to, who are you having these conversations with now? Because it's not always, it is about who you trust, absolutely. But you don't want to leave access to all you work for to someone who lacks understanding.
That's good.
They lack understanding, and you just dumped a bunch of your greatness on them, and they're sitting there not knowing what to do with it. So yes, it's about I trust a good amount of people. That's not true. Enough people,
Hey,
but
really?
but am I having these conversations with you? So the people who are in me and Chuck's estate plan, we have these conversations. a little too much. I think they're a little annoyed by me, but we have conversations about money. We have conversations about building businesses, investing. We have conversations about illness and, who, especially with my single girlfriends. Listen, hey, listen, who, if you have surgery today, what do you expect of me? I need to understand, who do you want me to call? Who am I supposed to, because especially most of my friends, we all come from a different state. None of our family is local. So if you had an emergency today, I need to know what to do. I can't, what is the code to your phone so I can get in there and get these numbers, or give me the numbers so I know who to call on a very practical level. If something is to happen to you, what is your plan?
Yo, it's funny. So one, I'm convicted a little bit. For a long time, I just is this notion of being a man and just taking care of everything. And I'm like, look, I got insurance, and I got this. Look, I got all of these codes and all of this stuff. And so for a long time, I just had it all here. And my daughter would have access to certain things, right? But I never really exposed, and it's been a point of contention in our marriage, obviously with not having access, right? And so one, we still have to have very important conversations. So I'm convicted on that level. But it's going to happen. It'll happen this weekend. But I have started writing down everything in like one space. It's a physical book that everybody is familiar with, and they know. I'm down to like if I'm a Best Buy Awards member, like you got everything in that book, and you know where it is, and you know how to get to it. And it's a book that I don't want to lose, but it has pertinent information. So if anything happens to me today or tomorrow, you got the code. You can crack anything. You got it. However, the conversation is very important to be able to walk people through that. I will say something very that's kind of cool. My friend, a really close friend of mine, he lost his dad. And I can't say that I'm like super close to my dad, but the one thing I will say is on one drunken night, he took me upstairs and showed me like, the safe, and he gave me like these codes because he worked for the government all these years. And, I don't know, things may have changed, but like he made sure that like if anything were to happen to me, just know all you got to do is give him this number. And this is my person. And I'm not one of those people, but at least I know who's going to take care of these things. But I think particularly as brothers, we have the Brothers Brunch. We don't have these conversations enough. And for whatever reason, we're secretive. We don't want people to know. And so I want to kind of transition or talk a little more about, and I'm cognizant of time, the different, like having different accounts and what that means. Like, for a long time, we always hear the term play accounts, right? But there is a way to put your spouse on your play account without them having access to that account. But it's a way that they're on your account should something happen to you. The worst thing in the world is to lose somebody and not have access to anything that they have.
Let me tell you something. First of all, let me just go ahead and say this. We don't have no play accounts in this house. You want to play, you're gonna play yourself, okay? We don't have no play account. I don't play like that. I play what?
I knew it was coming.
Play what? Why can't I be on a play account and play too? Like, no. So because you did something, you vexed me.
I know.
So,
I know your triggers.
Because I don't. So and let me say this. When Chuck and when he was going to start his own government contracting business, we met with the best CPA in the business to kind of give us advice. He was an old white guy. And he kept asking us these questions about, well, who's on this account? And are both of you on this account? Or is it just you? Or is it just... And I got annoyed. I was like, sir, we are married. We are on everything. I'm on everything. He's on, we everything is shared. And what he then explained to me, he schooled me and he said, look, I've been doing this for longer than you've been living. And I represent people from very different cultures. And he said, honestly, it's a cultural thing. He said, my experience is that African-American people, wives have their own account, husbands have their own account, and that's just the way y'all do business. And then he went down the list with different cultures and how they do things differently and how they separate personal and business. And it was just really, really eye-opening to me, because the one thing he left with, Because I said, okay, well, what is the better way to do it? And he basically said, well, it depends on the tax goals that you're trying to reach. And Chuck and I left that meeting saying that for the most part, we're doing it wrong. And it's out of ignorance because we feel we have to have our own thing to covet. So if you do have your own account, whatever makes your house happy, that's first. Whatever makes your house happy. I already told you what's happening over here.
Hey, listen, you gotta meet Sherry. You gotta meet my homegirl, Sheryl. Yo, would have fun together. Yo, she said, listen. She said the F is a play account that the wife has no access to. I'm gonna play with that account too.
Yeah.
So we all playing with accounts.
I don't know all accounts. It's crazy to me, but you have to check with your financial institution. I believe you can add a beneficiary on the account, even a bank account, just like you have your insurance. You have someone listed as a beneficiary, and they are able to just come into the institution with their ID saying that you're no longer here, but they believe themselves to be a beneficiary, and they may provide you with some proof or documentation to that effect. But
well, here's the thing. Like, I find it interesting that the older I get and the circles that I'm in, like, I mean, how long have we stayed up? Like when we got with your friends, we're over the house. It's 2-3 o'clock in the mornings. I always fall asleep.
Yes,
like,
you do.
Be the first one to sleep. But it's like your circles change and these conversations become so normal, right? And we're not even talking about this anymore because it's like, look, it's a no-brainer. The people in your circle get it. But to be honest, there are certain people that this conversation needs to be had, and they just don't really they don't know. They may know better, but they're not doing better, if that makes any sense. So the play account is a thing, right? And not knowing that you can actually have a beneficiary, or there's technical terms, and I find that each bank has it different. But I want to know, like, what happens when you just don't have a plan, when you have no plan.
So when you don't have a plan, like I said, you die intestate. And so the state decides who gets your belongings. And that is relational. So for example, in the state of Maryland, if you're married with children, most people think, oh, if I die without a will, everything goes to my spouse. That's not true. Your property, once the value is assessed, it's split between your children and your spouse. So split between the two of them. And I preface all of this by saying, if you're in a different jurisdiction, please research those rules. But if you're single, if you're not married, who does your belongings go to? Well, in Maryland, if you're single with children, everything goes to your children. Let's say you're single with no children. Who do your belongings go to? It's in order. Your living parents. If no living parents, then siblings. If no siblings, then it is sheets to the state, meaning it goes, your property goes to the state. So again, everything depends on your status at the time of death. Are you married? Are you unmarried? Do you have children? Do you have living parents? Are you single? And again, that's just in relation to your will. In your property. We haven't even broached the whole healthcare, the whole healthcare aspect of estate planning.
So we have a comment from Nita Warner. She says, you have to make changes and updates once the kids become grown, different plans for different ages and stages in life. So I would concur.
Yes.
I would assume you would as well.
If you have life changes, yes, you definitely should update your will.
We have another, I think, statement. It says, I feel that cultural differences, along with different financial upbringings, we have separate accounts, but we have full access to each other's accounts. I can tap his cards to all of his accounts. So
perfect.
Whatever works for your house, right?
And so when you say, I want to make sure we're talking the same terminology, though.
Okay.
When you say full access, what does that mean? Is your name on the account? Are you listed as owner on the account? What does full access mean? And, just as a point of transparency, my husband and I have a bunch of bank accounts. He don't know that half of them exist, just to be honest with you, but he is on them. He is on them. And we went to St. Lucia this summer. It was kind of the first time that we traveled out of the country without the kids. I bought, one of my friends over to one of the girls' godmom, and I'm like, here's the file cabinet. Here's the documents. If we don't come back, then This is where you need to go. Here's the key to the house. This is where you access the information. So yes, you have access to the account. That's great. But are you owner of the account? Because I don't want to use terms as
I like it.
interchangeable, because they're not always interchangeable.
I like it. Listen, again, food for thought, right? I think
Mhm.
I can't say this enough. I know some professional men well into the six figures that have not done this work.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it scares me
Mhm.
because and then so even with us, we still have so much work to do. Like we
Yeah.
know if something happens with the kids, this is the family that we want our kids to go to, right? We know
Mhm.
that. Have
Mhm.
we sat down and done all of the work needed to like it doesn't matter because if something were to happen to us today or tomorrow, like we still got work to do, right? So it keeps us up at night now because when you know better, you have to do
You
better.
have to do better. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and get this. I practice in this area. I do webinars, informational seminars once we get back mixing and mingling with one another. But the same is true for me. I need to update my own estate plan. Like I just told my husband yesterday, actually, his 40th birthday is towards the end of the month. Guess what he getting for his birthday?
What you get?
A new estate plan.
Oh
Happy
man, let's
birthday.
turn up. State plan. Let's go. He's excited about that. I'm so sure.
A upgraded
Listen, I
plan.
want to dig into
I'm excited.
I want to dig into power of attorney, right? Like people
Yes.
throw the term out there, but I really want to break it down because I was reading your information and you said power of attorney, but then you had like principal agent. Again, this is for our viewers to kind of learn some things about this. Like I don't know the difference between a principal and an agent per se. I think the principal is the person in charge.
Yes. So first of all, what is a power of attorney? Okay. A
Okay.
power of attorney is when you give access to someone else, access to make decisions for you. So when we're talking about power of attorney in an estate plan document, we're typically talking about a financial power of attorney where
Mhm.
you're giving access and authority really to another person. So you are the principal, the person who owns the property, the person who is giving or transferring the authority is the principal.
And that's alive or in your plan for when you die. Either one.
So it can go either way. It can
Okay.
be most are live and in action as soon as they're or signed, or you can have a springing power of attorney, which comes into effect at a point, let's say at a point of incapacitation or something like that. But
Okay.
you are giving someone access to make the agent to make decisions as you would make them. The thing about it, so a will kicks in after you have deceased. After you have expired, your will is your plan that shares, it's your voice from the grave. A power of attorney is effective while you're living. Okay. Is effective while you're living.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
And so it can be immediate in most cases where you sign it and they can go today and open a bank account, with your name on it and act for you and do financial things. Or it can be springing, in which it activates or it springs into effect at a particular period of time. The real purpose of a power of attorney in an estate plan, well, there can be multiple purposes. Let's say that I want to buy a property in Florida, but I
Mhm.
don't live there, but I want to buy a property there. I can give my sister-in-law, who does live there, power of attorney to do the whole real estate transaction for me. I can make it limited to that transaction,
Really?
or I can make it broad and give her power of attorney to do whatever I want. So there's a lot of wiggle room, but it's something that exists in the present. For estate planning documents specifically, if there is a time where you become incapacitated,
Hmm.
you want to make sure you have what's called a durable power of attorney, because it gives an individual, your agent, to make decisions financially on your behalf when you really cannot, because
Right.
you are incapacitated for whatever reason. And that's the part for estate planning that you really, really want to have in place. You want to have a durable power of attorney in place, because if you're no longer in a position to make decisions, you want somebody to immediately make decisions for you. Here's where it gets a little complicated on a practical level. if you have let's say you have a springing power of attorney that doesn't kick into effect until you become incapacitated, usually you have to have some type of written authorization from a medical professional to declare your incapacitation. Well, if something financial needs to be done today, you don't have whomever, your spouse on that bank account. Let's use a married couple because it's easier. You don't have your spouse on that bank account. That's where the money is. You have a power of attorney that's springing, which means it doesn't kick in effect until you are incapacitated. Your spouse now has to go to your medical professional saying, in most cases, I need two letters from two different medical professionals saying that you are in fact incapacitated. So this power of attorney can kick into effect. That takes time. Not only is that an issue of time, but does your spouse have the ability to speak to those medical professionals to get the letter certifying your incapacitation? So it can get very complicated in real life because I work with real life situations like this.
Sounds complicated.
So for my recommendation typically is do a general power of attorney, have it durable, meaning lasting beyond the time of incapacitation, and keep it locked away. Keep it locked away. So it's there, it's active, it's live, but it's not in the hands of anyone you feel would do damage. Here's another part. If you feel that the agent you assign is going to do things improperly or do things that'll damage you and your financial picture,
they don't need to be the agent.
Your agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. They probably shouldn't be your agent.
I was going to say that. It's funny. There was my grandmother is getting older, Nana, and there were some things that we had to do, and so a few of us in the family, she designated to do certain things, and so with me, I'm sitting in front of her lawyer, her attorney, for a very long time, and her attorney's asking her questions, and I'm highly offended, and she's like, "Are you, do you feel like you're in your absolute right mind and yada yada?" And I'm sitting there like, hello, I'm here. Hello, I'm in the room. And she's basically asking these questions. She says, listen, whether you're offended or not, because I see your disposition, it doesn't matter. This is my client and she's choosing to have you here. And I know her very well. So I'm going to ask her very specific questions. And then so afterwards, she said, okay, so everything's a done deal. I have no reason to believe that whatever. She goes into saying you'd be surprised how many grandchildren take full advantage of the grandmother they love to kind of get property, to get, power of attorney, the whole nine. And it's her job as the attorney to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And she needs to look her client in the eye and ask these really difficult questions.
Yeah. So my other way into estate planning, for 6 years of starting practicing law, I represented individuals with disabilities, adults with disabilities, as well as elderly individuals who may have issues of incapacitation. And, I used to represent them if their family was seeking guardianship over them. And so I am elder financial abuse is one of the most underrated areas of law. People don't pay attention to it. Financial exploitation of the elderly, but not by strangers. A lot of times we think it's the person on the phone calling, trying to get Nana to, buy something with her credit card. It's not. It's by family members who. And so when we do, I actually just had someone call me because his father's in a nursing home and he wants to get power of attorney with the whole COVID-19. And I'm like, yeah, I can't help you because I need to have some real conversations with your father. And I'm not going to a nursing home. I have my own reasons why I can't go out. And I'm not doing that. So I referred him to a bunch of other attorneys who may be willing. But at the end of the day, my conversation needs to be with your 92-year-old dad, because I need to ensure that you helping as son is not putting him in a place of duress. It's not putting him, that this is his decision and he's doing it of his own volition. So y'all don't go out there trying to make your parent get power of attorney over your parent stuff when they don't want to.
All right, so listen, and we knew we weren't going to have enough time, so we may have to do part part too. But I am going to make sure that we don't go over an hour 15, but an hour is
Mhm.
really the goal. I really want to unpack having an attorney. You know, sometimes there's a connotation with whether people have attorneys or not. And
Mhm.
some people in the circle have attorneys, some people do not. And I think that the perception of having an attorney, there's just a lot that comes with it. It's kind of convoluted. So I really want to unpack that. So, you know, can you talk about what that means? Like, if I say my attorney, does that mean I have them on a retainer, or is it that I know someone like Shari and she's my attorney?
So part of one of the first things that they teach you in law school is that when you represent someone, or more better yet, when you don't represent someone, they need to be clear that you are not representing them.
Okay.
And so I am very clear, with you and other people. Hey, I don't represent him. I'm not, because I don't ever want to be caught up. Because if you believe that I represent you,
Hmm.
um, I might be caught up and have to represent you
Yeah.
if I've left you with the impression that
Hmm.
I represent you. So that's
You say
kind
it
of
a lot.
Maryland's code of ethics. That's
Hmm.
why a lot of attorneys are real clear. There's a very fine line. No, there's no representation agreement here. So if you're getting an attorney, the industry is changing a little bit. It used to be that you sign your engagement agreement, your contract, and you pay a large retainer, a lump sum, which goes into an escrow account. So it's held for you, to use for you. The attorneys are just not spending that money. They're holding that money, and
That's
they
good info.
spend it as they work for you. They
Okay.
spend it.
And
Okay.
that could be 15 minutes on a phone call.
It can be 15 minutes on a phone call, or it could be overtime. So you need to, if you have a retainer agreement where you are signing a written agreement and paying a lump sum of money, you should know what that lump sum is. There's always a threshold where you have to replenish. If you get to a certain amount, you want me to keep working, you have to put some more in the pot. But also you should know the hourly rate of that particular attorney, so you can do the math yourself. If you're gonna think twice about making that phone call. But for and some attorneys, depending on what the legal matter is, can give you a flat rate. On some things like document review, like drafting of estate planning documents, for the most part, I give a flat rate for individuals, and then for a married couple. If that's for the most part, if we do a consultation and I can tell that it's a lot of time that needs to be spent, we're not doing a flat rate, because you're going to require more time than would typically be used to
So I have a
create the
question.
plan.
I and reading kind of through your information that you have public, there are certain things that you have rates already out there on.
Yes.
And so can
Yes.
you explain that? Like, are most attorneys that transparent? And just tell us
Um,
why.
I don't know. Some are. Like I said, there's a change in the legal industry. The legal industry is usually a little bit behind the curve as from other industries. Some do, some don't. For me, I don't see why not. When my rates change, I publicize them. I'm not a competitor, so I don't care what anyone else is doing. My rates are based on my experience and also my business expense. What do I need to run my practice? And so I that's how my rate is built. Some attorneys can't control their rate to some extent if they're with a firm. I'm in solo practice, so it's just me out here on
Right.
a limb with my mentor, who at this point I really think that I should start cutting her a check, because I pull on her so much. But if someone is with a firm or with a larger legal organization, then you can assure that you're going to be paying a little bit more, because you're paying for the nice glass door that you walk to. You like sitting in the 54th floor while looking out of the window, the nice glass, and you like when they bring you water and coffee, you're paying for that in your in your fee. So it differs. Some attorneys have their rates up front. some don't. I think a lot of attorneys will probably fight me for having some things up front. But at the end of the day, because I am in solo practice, I find that it cuts down on a lot of administrative things to just put things out there. So you know up front whether or not you're going to hire me, because guess what's not changing? My rate. So you know, if you go to my website, yeah, I don't want to do this. And so for me, I cut to the quick and I'm able to serve who wants me to serve them.
Great. So I want to be a good steward over your time, and I love the fact that we've discussed a lot, and we started at exactly 6:30, and
We
we will
did.
end at exactly 7:30. I love being on time. You know, it's one of my things. But what I want to say is like, so we'll give people some time to like ask some questions if they have any.
Mhm.
But I want to give you a platform to discuss like what's been one of your most difficult discussions.
Um, Honestly, I don't think that I've had any. I think if there is a difficult discussion to have, some things financially talking to my husband about can be difficult. And that's only because not he put me in charge. He makes a whole lot more money than I do in practice. In
Mm,
practice, and plus, my money doesn't come into our personal house. I'm trying to build something here, and so managing our household. If something goes wrong, it's on me. So it's always a hard for me to say, hey, you've entrusted me with this and I screwed up.
mm,
I have to kind of humble myself because I think I know everything. I can do everything well. At least I think so. So for me, that's it when it comes to talking about kind of falling on my sword when it comes to us talking about finances. That I would say that's a difficult discussion, but nah, I come from a single mom. My dad and I had to, rebuild our relationship starting when I was 21. That wasn't a difficult discussion. It wasn't. I guess because I am painfully honest with myself and with other people, I'm kind of accustomed to just cutting to the quick and being raw about things. So I don't
that's
have,
an understatement.
maybe when my kids get older and I have to have some conversations with them that I'm not braced for, maybe that's when it'll come, but I not too many. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Listen, you heard it here first, guys. This is food for thought. My very, very first guest, she is amazing. I feel like we can talk a little longer because there's some other areas that we certainly did some pre-work on. So we'll have to have you back if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
I'll probably have your husband with his big head on the show at some
He has to get a haircut.
yeah. Well, we're at, you know, we're at. But I really, really appreciate it. You had a lot of great comments. People basically chiming in, just saying, one, what's your website? And two, tuning in just because they know that they needed to hear this information. You know, when we talked, we realized that this wasn't going to be the most provocative, conversation, if you will. It wasn't going to be super sexy, but it's a conversation that we absolutely had to have. So I'm just happy that you were able to kind of lean into this work. Thank you so much for being my guest. Do you have any questions of me?
No, I like this. I told you I love the whole live streaming thing. I was a little nervous, but I don't have any questions for you. I do have something for the audience though. So,
Yes.
if someone is in Maryland, they want to work through their estate plan, shoot me an email at admin@ShariFleming.com. So just take my little website and admin, ADMIN at ShariFleming.com. If they do that within the next 24 hours, because in my mind, I was going to have a promo code and all of these things where they can sign up. I didn't get any of that done because it's Friday and I have kids and I just finished making tacos before I sat down. I had to be cute. I didn't have time. So if they email me within the next 24 hours, literally, it's going to be 7:30 tomorrow. We're done. Email me at that email address, and they're in Maryland. They want legal services. I'll do 10% off one legal service just for listening and dialing into the Brothers Brunch. And so we'll do it that way. So that's for your listeners.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your time. Again, Shari Fleming, folks. She is not only an attorney, she is a professor. She's a realtor, and she didn't mention this, but she does mobile notary, not mobile, but virtual notary,
Remote no.
remote notary.
You are
Play
such
on words
a
there.
hype man. Thank
Listen, she does it all. But here's the thing: she's a mom, she's a wife, and she's a for anybody in her circle, they'll tell you she's a friend,
Oh,
a
thank you.
direct friend. She's very direct. So don't ever
Yeah,
ask her for any advice that you don't want to know. Real
yeah.
talk. So thank you, Shari, for your time. I'm going to dismiss you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This was Food for Thought. I really appreciate you all being my audience. You know, you could be anywhere right now. You could be listening to anybody, but you're listening to Just Kev, and I really appreciate it. This is Food for Thought. Again, the Brothers Brunch, cuisine, culture, connection. I love you, folks. I love you for tuning in, and God bless and good night.